Good evening. You will say at the back, if you aren't hearing, put a hand up. Can you hear all right? You've been asked to come along here this evening to be introduced to a form of meditation, because it's thought that you will be wanting each individual to verify for himself or herself some of what is taught in the school at your groups. And this is the best way to do that. You've heard, I think, a varying amount about it, so I have to speak in fairly general terms. But first of all, I've been asked to say who I am and what this house is about and how we come into it. I'm the fellow who happened to introduce to the school about 1950, after it had got into its stride again after World War II, a system of knowledge originating in the East but put into Western form around 1915. And that was taught us for some years by our first teacher, a Russian writer, P.D. Uspensky, whose house this is. I was also the fellow that came across a certain Maharishi that you may have heard about, and took along various people in this society here, the Study Society, and also introduced the School of Economic Science to his meditation, and was empowered and specially trained to give it by him. He made me promise, before empowering me, to give it in exactly the form that it's been given in for nearly 6,000 years in India. And that's why you have this initiation ceremony and whatnot. One reason. If there's anything you want to ask about that, do, because we will let you have a translation of what is said at the meditation at the initiation ceremony, and why you bring gifts, and so on. Any people want to know about that already?
The question that I would like to ask is, why is it necessary to give gifts?
Oh. It's part of the ancient tradition, and it's said that unless you give something, put your hand in your pocket and give something, you don't value what you buy. But there's another side to it. The meditation, this system of meditation, because there are many things called meditation, this comes from Raja Yoga. It's an adaptation for Western life of a method used in Raja Yoga. Now, Raja Yoga is rather different from all the other branches of yoga taught in yoga schools in India for different types of people. Hatha Yoga for control of the body, Jnana Yoga, control of the mind and knowledge and a scientific approach, Bhakti Yoga, an emotional approach, the basis of most religious ways. And there are others, of course, hundreds of them, hundreds of varieties. But Raja Yoga deals with consciousness, learning to control consciousness. And since consciousness cannot be defined or described, it's the great unknown. It can't be taught in the same way as the others, and is always taught by word of mouth and personal tuition. And the idea of this initiation ceremony is that it brings you into a different state of consciousness in which you're more receptive to the technique, and therefore you get a good start. And once you have a good start, it tends to evolve naturally of itself. In India, the meaning of the ceremony is that we invite the leaders of this long tradition, 6,000 years, which is called the Advaita, or non-dualistic system of the Shankaracharyas. You invite the leaders to be present in spirit. And when you invite anyone to your house in India, you provide them with water to drink, water for their bath, clean linen, fruit, flowers, spices, and light and camphor, which burns without residue and symbolizes consciousness. And so, we, as promised, we go through and enact this ceremony, and you bring these gifts which symbolize what the initiator will be doing during the ceremony. The whole thing only takes about 5 minutes, but it's a strange thing that, believe it or not, the meditation just doesn't go unless you do something rather special at the beginning to try and raise the person's level of consciousness. Any questions about that? Does that answer yours?
Yes, I think it does.
Well, when you've had it, and we don't like telling you in advance about details either of the ceremony or of the method, because we don't want to introduce suggestion or hypnosis in any form. And because the effects of the ceremony and the meditation are entirely individual, quite different from one person to another. And each person will take it in their own way, and we want to let them take it in their own way and not try and have a sort of mass-produced lot of meditators, so-called. Well, I was saying that I was the fellow that introduced the Maharishi to your school in 1960, and from that has come the meditation that so many in the people in the school practice. Then in 1960, I myself wasn't entirely satisfied that the Maharishi had all the answers. So I was exceedingly grateful to him when I went on a meditation course with him to India, and he introduced us to the head of his tradition, and at the very first glance I recognized that this was what I was looking for, that he was a man who always, what is called, remembered himself, always remembers himself. He's always in a state of consciousness of himself, and he can turn on higher states of consciousness at will. About that, when I first met him and first heard him talk, about 70 Westerners like myself were sitting on the shore of the Ganges, and a whole crowd of Indians, and the Shankaracharya, the head of the tradition, on his throne by the water's edge. And I heard, and the Maharishi translating, and I heard to my astonishment that he said, just the same as our first teacher, Mr. Uspensky, you see, the whole problem with human life is that a man does not remember himself. And to illustrate that, he told a story. He said that at one time 10 men were going to swim across the Ganges at about this spot where we're now sitting. At that point, the Ganges is coming out of the mountains and is flowing very fast, and it's also infested with crocodiles. And so they were rather worried. And when they got to the other side, they counted heads. But whoever counted, the number always came out to 9 instead of 10. And they were very worried about this, had somebody been eaten by a crocodile. But a conscious man happened to be passing, and they explained their problem to him, and he said, well, you see, nobody counts himself. You see all the other people, and you count them, but nobody ever brings himself into the picture. And just to remind them, so they wouldn't forget in future, he gave each one a whack on the head with his stick. The first one got 1 whack, the next one got 2, and so on. And the last man remembered for a very long time because he got 10. And this is a fact, that in all human life there are very few people who know themselves and remember themselves. Any questions about that? It's a trick of nature, because if you ask anybody if they're conscious of themselves, they will always say yes, because your question has, for the moment, made them conscious. Next minute they forget. And this is an illusion which plays havoc with human life. I'm sure you don't believe any of that, so do come back at me. In fact, Raja Yoga defines 4 states of consciousness. And it says that all mankind live in the first 2, which are deep sleep at night and what we call the waking state during the day, which they call sleep with dreams. And as I say, most people pass their whole lives in these 2 states, which recur, of course, every 24 hours, except that nearly everybody gets small glimpses of another state of consciousness, especially when they're children. And these glimpses that people get are very much in the literature today. They're called peak experiences or extrasensory perception, so on. But the majority of people forget them and do nothing about it. But you here in this room are obviously among the people who do something about it. Otherwise you wouldn't have joined the school, you wouldn't be here, and the important thing is to try and answer the questions of the people who do want to do something about it, such as meditate. Any questions about that?
The question is, why do we forget ourselves?
It's partly because we don't understand what the meaning of consciousness is. In the West, consciousness is always equated either with sense data, sensation, or with thought processes. And this is what produces the ordinary daytime state of waking sleep, or sleep with dreams. That our consciousness is continually tied up with changing sense impressions and changing thoughts. And meditation is the quickest and most universal way we've found over 40 years of penetrating through those two states for half an hour twice a day and reaching the third state of self-consciousness during the half hour. And then when you emerge, there are two chairs up this side. When you emerge, and when you practiced this third state of consciousness for quite a long time, you have glimpses of the fourth state, which is seeing the world as it actually is, seeing things as they are, understanding other people as if you were in their shoes, and many other benefits. In order to that you should understand why consciousness is not the same as thought processes, I can give you one very simple example from all those we used to collect before we met the meditation. It's probably familiar to you. It comes from an illiterate German shoemaker named Jakob Böhmer, and it's recorded of the first of his three major experiences of consciousness by his friend and biographer Martensen as follows. Sitting one day in his room, his eyes fell upon a burnished pewter dish which reflected the sunshine with such marvelous splendor that he fell into an inward ecstasy. And it seemed to him as if he now looked into the principles and deepest foundations of things, believing that it was only fancy, and in order to banish it from his mind, he went out upon the green. But here too, he remarked that he gazed into the very heart of things, and that actual nature harmonized with what he had inwardly seen. Now in this case, his inward ecstasy was triggered off by sensory impression, the sunshine on the burnished dish. But many forms of self-consciousness, many instances of self-consciousness come without that sensory triggering. The one thing that self-consciousness, or varieties, or instances have in common is that your mind must be disengaged. You must be comparatively still. Otherwise there's such a hubbub going on all the time that we're deaf and blind to the presence of this conscious being which inhabits each of us. And that is why this meditation is a very clever method which must take the place of the exercise you've been doing, because it gets you through both the daytime state and the sleep state at night into this third state. Any questions?
Is everybody who goes through the initiation ceremony able to reach the third stage?
The question is everybody who goes through the meditation able to reach this third stage of consciousness?
Everybody is able to, yes. I don't say that everybody does. Because success in meditation lies in giving up all movement of the mind and any of the contents of the ordinary daytime state. So if you are really genuinely giving up all those things during a half hour, then we can guarantee that you will come into this third state, which will be first of all felt as a very peaceful silence, nothing, no movement of the mind at all going on. But quite soon you will become aware of this conscious being which inhabits you and which you know nothing about in the ordinary way. The scientists, the psychologists, the physiologists are all studying, if you like, the car. They study the machinery. And this gives no indication whatsoever of the driver of the car or owner of the car. Consciousness refers to the driver or the owner of the car. And you don't have to know a lot about the machinery.
Is there a state of consciousness beyond the third state?
Yes, very much so. The third state is in a way transitional, but carries very many advantages. But in the third state, you can know yourself wholly and completely. You can become objective to yourself, and you feel yourself as one whole and not as assortment of mechanisms. And in the fourth state, you can know the world, or part of the world, as it really is. Other people as they really are. A wider, more universal consciousness than the consciousness just of oneself. But you have to go through the self-consciousness to get the other. Well, you don't look awfully cheerful. You're just going to be introduced to this marvelous thing. Yes.
Does one attain the third state of consciousness only for the duration of the period of meditation? That was the first question.
Well, may I just speak about that? You may not attain anything demonstrable during a half-hour of meditation except peace and quiet. The advantages of 2 half hours a day come in active life, in between, whenever necessary, you have this expansion of consciousness to take in yourself as a whole and your surroundings, and know what is right for you and what is wrong in those circumstances. You're never alone. You're not afraid of anything. One can adopt in these troublesome times in London, you can adapt that psalm, thou shalt not be afraid of the terrorist by night, nor of the bomb that explodeth in the daytime. Many other advantages, so more pleasant to live with. You can get testimony of your husband or wife and children. Little things annoy you less, and nice things you enjoy more. Because consciousness is a form of energy, a special form of energy. And the poet Blake was absolutely right when he said from his own experience, energy is eternal delight. Because consciousness always brings with it a strange new kind of delight, which is independent of conditions. And actually, consciousness is the secret of happiness, which somehow nowadays we seem to have mislaid. So, to answer that first part of your question, you get these benefits from meditation at unexpected times, and not necessarily in the half hour, where you just simply try to withdraw your attention from all the contents of your usual state of mind. Now that's the second part. Do you remember?
Do you still have it?
Later it becomes permanent, as I said, about the Shankaracharya. But the great thing about consciousness is to acquire control of the four states. The Shankaracharya, or any fully realized man, goes to sleep at night. He goes into the first and lowliest state of consciousness, sleep at night. He transacts his business in the ordinary daytime state. But he remembers himself all the time, so he's never far away from the two higher states of consciousness, the highest of which requires special conditions. The Shankaracharya says that of himself, that he has to go sometimes to a place where nobody knows where he is. In his young days he retreated to a Himalayan cave, but he says that's not necessary with the meditation. But you may have to have a week of complete peace and quiet and freedom from everyday affairs to get the full cosmic consciousness. I don't suppose you have very great ambitions to do that. It doesn't matter.
Where does the attention go during meditation?
Where does it go the rest of the day? That's the problem. It's scattered into 1,000 pieces. And one of the first things one learns in meditation is that the attention becomes one-pointed, single. And that's a tremendous saving of energy. But during the day, our attention flits from one thing to another, and the mind with it. And this finer part of the mind never gets a rest at all. So the first great benefit which everybody can get is to rest this delicate part of the mind and become single-minded for a few minutes. 2 or 3 minutes of that sets you up for the whole day.
Well, you've spoken tonight about our meditation that's sort of come down to us, sitting in this room tonight. But where did meditation originally come from?
I wasn't there, so I can't tell you firsthand. The tradition that we've been told is that it was given by inspiration to a man in prehistory, but about which certain things are known, and he passed it on in this long tradition. But there's to a man in prehistory, but about which certain things are known, and he passed it on in this long tradition. But there's constant desire to meditate, which arises in human nature, naturally, and therefore if he hadn't been given it by inspiration, hundreds of people would have been. It's a natural need of human nature to be alone with his maker, with his true self. And all kinds of ways human nature has invented of doing this. There's another theory that in a state of grace, originally, like Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, one naturally was in a state of pure consciousness until the serpent came along. But that having eaten of the tree of knowledge and being luckily prevented from eating the tree of life, there has been a need to have artificial methods to recapture what was once lost. And you have to have schools and systems of meditation and all sorts of eightfold path of yoga, which is much more strenuous than anything we know about. All these artificial things have to be done because mankind, having been given free will, gets into trouble all around. There's a story told about this, that you mustn't take even 2 half hours a day too seriously. You know, you are all looking terribly serious, and the idea of consciousness begins first of all with lightheartedness. So, lift it a bit. But this story explains why something artificial is necessary, apparently, to get what should be innate in human nature. There was a laundryman, which is called in India a dhobi man, and he had a fleet of donkeys, and the donkeys used to carry the soiled laundry to the river in the morning and bring back the clean laundry in the evening. And one day he fell ill, and he said to his son, "My boy, just get these donkeys moving and get the laundry down to the river." And the son tried everything he could think of. He whacked them and beat them and shouted at them, and the donkeys wouldn't move. So he went back to his father and said, "Dad, I'm sorry, the donkeys won't move." So the dhobi man said, "Oh, I forgot to tell you. The donkeys have got it firmly fixed in their heads that they can't move. And so I've got into the way of going through the motions of tying knots round their feet at night, and then they stay still during the night, and undoing the knots in the morning, and then they step off." This applies to all of us. We're the donkeys.
Is this type of meditation progressive?
Depends what sort of a donkey you are. If you don't invent things of your own if you just simply carry out the rather simple instructions honestly. It is undoubtedly progressive. It will go through a natural course of evolution which takes you up the ladder of self-realization. And the final state is the state of the man who has control over all four states of consciousness, can have them when he wants them, and that is known as turiya or enlightenment. But, now don't be impatient. Take it slowly, and don't listen to anything anybody else says. It's entirely individual. Things happen in quite different order, with different people. Just take slowly what one's asked to do, and in due course the seeds will come up. Do you think they're getting thirsty?
Well, I don't know. There's certainly one further question here. It is said that the absolute created by meditating. What is meant by that?
As I said that...
The absolute created by meditating.
Oh, yes. Well, it's an unscientific notion, let's grant that, but it's impossible to look at the universe without realizing that there is a mind behind the universe. And it's impossible for a mind to work without consciousness. So one must infer that there is a consciousness of the universe. And we're told in this non-dualistic system that it isn't a God out there, but that each of us has a spark of the divine which is of the same nature as the creator of the universe. So that if you come, first of all, by giving everything else up, come to your own spark of divinity, and practice substituting for the feeling of a limited I or ego, a feeling of universal consciousness to which everything belongs, then you will, in 3 years, you will experience that. It takes that long. But 3 years? Now, consciousness means nothing to us at the moment, does it? But nearly everybody wants something that they don't get. And consciousness, being a special form of energy, will give you what you want. Unless it's a complete fake or something quite ridiculous. You may want money. You'll get more money the more conscious you are. I worked for the School of Meditation for a long time, and we just got every sort of thing written on the forms in answer to the question, what do you want? It doesn't matter. We give you the meditation. It's up to you what to use it for. And now you've filled in some forms, haven't you, already? What do you want? And I get rather tired of people writing what they ought to want. I want to help school, or I want to be holy, or something. I want to help mankind. I'm afraid it's too late, isn't it?
It's too late.
But it's a great help to the person giving you the meditation if you're able to put something genuine on the form, even if, as a lot of little girls put in their form, I want a pony. They put, I want a pony, or I want a big family, lots of children, and I want to be free of my parents, things like this. But I say to them, well, we can't really promise everything. But what we will say that if you meditate properly, you will probably find a way to get a pony.
The question is, I think that what most of us want is why we first came into the school, and that is to know the truth.
Yes, well, consciousness, by derivation, two Latin words, cum and scio. It means knowing altogether and at once, knowing the whole truth and nothing but the truth. So this is the way. But knowing doesn't only mean intellectual knowing, because the same two words also give rise to our word conscience, which means feeling altogether inconsistencies which ordinarily we brush aside. So there is an emotional realization of truth as well as an intellectual realization of truth. Any other things that most of you wanted? Any general wants?
How interrelated is the meditation and the school's teaching?
Well, I don't know what the school's teaching. But each person can find a way to relate at least something that the school is teaching with the meditation. Would you say?
Yes.
Yeah.
There is, in fact, in truth, there is a very close relationship between meditation and the school's teaching, inasmuch that they both have the same end. The end is the same. Well, the question then is, can they therefore operate independently?
There are a lot of good meditators all around the world who don't belong to the school. I'm sorry, but there are. But people are very different, you see. Some need a school. They like to not to have to think for themselves. Others can operate singly or in groups. People are very, very different. But the meditation is for everybody. And personally, I do think that if you belong to an organization which has a definite aim and object, you keep going at the meditation long enough so that it has these desirable effects. We've noticed that a lot of people who get it sort of casually and don't have any help and think they can go it alone don't keep it up. It gets crowded out. So I think you're very lucky. But do try and connect it with something you really always have wanted but haven't been able to get. I'd like to read from this Shankaracharya just for a short thing. All living beings seem to be crying out for something or other. There's a story about the great Mughal Emperor Akbar, who, while out hunting, once had to spend the night in the jungle. Unable to sleep because of the crying of the jackals, he asked why they were crying. Someone said it was because of the cold. So Akbar ordered blankets to be distributed to them. But still, they went on crying. And when the emperor asked the reason, again, he was told it was because of their joy at getting the blankets. It's the same, the Shankaracharya said, in human life. When one is a child, one wants toys. An older boy or girl may want other things. They may want education. When one's education is finished, one wants a career, employment, marriage or children, marriage and children. When one gets employment, one wants promotion. As the time goes on, when one reaches 60, one wants to retire. And in old age, as one's body gets more painful and decrepit, one longs to die. Thus, from beginning to end, there is never contentment. But if you develop this relationship with the source of all your energy, the source of all your happiness, your divine self, then there is contentment in spite of conditions. Whatever is happening physically to your body or mentally on a subtle level, you're still connected on the causal level, your soul, with this divine nature. And another advantage of expansion of consciousness is that you understand great writings, works of art, in the way that the creator of that work of art was inspired. I just happen to know that Shakespeare's sonnets are an intimate record of his own states of consciousness. And the poet, the late W.H. Auden, agrees about that. He'd been through many of the same experiences, and he doesn't believe in dark ladies and attractive young men. He's writing about his experiences of consciousness all the way through. Just take Sonnet 29, for instance. I read part of it. When in disgrace with fortune and men's eyes, I all alone beweep my outcast state, and trouble deaf heaven with my bootless cries, and look upon myself and curse my fate, and so on. Yet in these thoughts, myself almost despising, haply I think on thee, and then my state, like to the lark at break of day rising from sullen earth, sings hymns at heaven's gate. For thy sweet love remembered, such wealth brings, that then I scorn to change my state with kings. I don't know whether he meditated, but that's the state that one often gets as a result of meditation, only one doesn't happen to be a poet, so one can't express it.
Someone has suggested that there are no disadvantages.
No, there really aren't any disadvantages in meditation. Over these 14 years, my wife and I have given it all around the world, in all sorts of different countries, and we've never occasioned any tragedies we know of. The worst disadvantage is that you won't do it, and you'll stay looking just as happy as you look now. That's the worst that can happen to you. but do approach it in a rather light-hearted way, because this spark of divinity reveals himself more easily to light-hearted people. Come with an open mind and simply do what's suggested without expecting anything and without demanding anything. And very often, well, people differ very much. Some get what they're looking for in the first minute. Some take some time, some weeks, 2 or 3 weeks perhaps, or several days. In this case, we were told that in the fairy story, or the myth, it's the fable of the hare and the tortoise, it's the tortoise that usually wins. One can try and press on too fast. Well, they've about had enough, do you think? It's difficult to talk about these things, and I'm not blaming anybody at all. I talk too much, of course. One of the burdens on the mind, this delicate part of the human mind, by which man differs from animals, is that it's always weighed down either by the past, which is over and done with, or by some future which probably will never happen. We live all the time, the past and the future, and the mind gets very tired. And this is one of the reasons for our unhappiness, a perpetually harassed and tired mind. And the meditation does relieve one of that burden for 2.5 hours a day, which is a mighty big thing. And there's a story told about this. I'm sorry, you've heard it before, but by the Shankaracharya, several stories in fact, but one of them was where there were a husband and wife who kept on arguing about what career their son should adopt. He was a lawyer, and she came from a family of doctors. She wanted him to be a doctor, he wanted him to be a lawyer. Hearing the row that they were making, arguing, a meditator happened to pass that way and asked them what the trouble was about. And they explained to him. And he said, all right, fetch the boy, let's ask him. And they looked at each other and went very pink and said, the boy is not born yet. And so he said, oh, well, just use your energy getting him born, and when he comes to about 9 or 10, we can see what sort of career will suit him. But this is what we do all the time, and if you watch, you'll see that your mind is always going off onto something to come or something that's happened in the past. And you withdraw your mind from both of those, both also from the favorable or the unfavorable. This is in between the meditation. You learn to see things impersonally, and attend to the present moment so that your response to this present moment is entirely appropriate. The consciousness appears in the present moment, not associated with time or distance or anything else. It's eternal being, timeless, and associated with unity and happiness. Well, I hope that you sign on and that we shall see some of you. And don't go away with the idea that this is not for me. Don't say we'll do it much better, because I assure you that every one of you can do it if he wants to, or she wants to. All right?
Thank you very much.
There's nothing else we've missed out on?
I don't think so, no.